everybody. Gene, how's it
Hello.
going, man?
Pretty good. For those of you who don't know, I've had a nasty pinched nerve, but it's just starting to feel better, a little bit better. So, yay.
Yay. That's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear that. We have an awesome show for you tonight, guys. We're live streaming here from all over the world, from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, from Hong Kong, Knoxville, Tennessee, San Francisco, and Las Vegas. How about that? But a really cool show, and again, we have some really great guest panelists with us today on this bioactive breakdown segment, and we're going to deep dive demystifying AI, because I know everybody wants to really know what that's all about. So, and we have the experts to really deep dive that, and of course, that ties into nutraselect.ai, of course, and we'll get into those touch points as well. But anyway, let's. I think Gene, did you have anything else you wanted to update before we jump into it? And we'll go around and everybody introduce themselves.
I would just say I wanted people to know. I got back from China, from Shanghai, where I attended a longevity summit. And the underlying themes were biohacking and longevity. And what was interesting, things came up that you might expect: nutrigenomics, other aspects of how one can biohack. But the whole idea of personalization came into there, and there was emphasis placed on the importance of having evidence-based nutraceuticals, if that's what you were doing. And that, to me, fits in so nicely with what AI is all about. It isn't just technology. It is the next evolution of evidence-based personalization. So I just wanted everybody to know that.
Yeah, no, and that's a perfect segue, man. It's really cool. This is and timely for given our topic tonight. So let's introduce our panelists. I'll let you guys do yourself, and I'll start at the top left for me. And Moon, please introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi guys, Moon here. I'm the one who is based in Hong Kong, so I'm been ahead in time. In short, I was actually a biochemist by education. I majored in epigenetics and glycobiology back in the days. That was a long time ago. But ever since then, I stepped into technology, digital, virtual reality, and now I am running DigitSense, which is an AI transformation and product studio. I've always been a product person. I'm never really like an engineer myself. So obviously I'm going to talk more about AI from the product and commercial perspective, as in change management, product, redefinition, I would say, or reimagination of different industries and businesses. So yeah, glad to be here with all of you.
And for those who don't know, who didn't see the announcement this week, Moon and I have been talking to each other for a long time now. Her and her team helped us develop the prototype a year ago for NutraSelect before we even had launched the company this year. And we just announced our strategic technology partnership on Tuesday. So again, this is going to go to a whole new level, guys, and I can't wait for that. I'm super excited. So thank you, Moon, for joining us tonight. Kate, up in San Francisco.
Hey, how's it going? Yes, I'm Kate Hughes. I'm coming to you from north of San Francisco in Sonoma County, where I can be at a winery in any direction from my house in about 10 minutes. So I'm pretty spoiled.
Nice.
And I come to this group from the marketing side of the conversation. I have been marketing at the intersection of health and tech for my entire career. And as is normal in this space, I go where the tech goes. So right now it's a lot of marketing of AI products and understanding the consumer sentiment around it and how they feel about health and AI. Right now I am the CMO of Sleep AI, and I also do fractional CMO work for other startups in the health tech space as well.
Very awesome, Kate. And again, great to have you on board. It's going to be great to have that consumer perspective, because we're going to deal with that with NutraSelect in terms of targeting the daily supplement users out there and how we're going to engage them and that sort of thing. So your insights are going to be pretty valuable today. And then that leads us to Michael, coming from Vegas, baby.
That's all right. That's all right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Michael Bass, and yes, I live in Vegas. While Kate, you might be 10 minutes from a winery, we excitingly are only 5 minutes away from a casino in every direction. And living here does not mean
That sounds dangerous.
I'm just kidding. What happens here stays here. I can't say anymore. No,
I've
but
seen that advertisement, yes.
yes, everyone come to Vegas. We need your tax dollars. Tourism is down. Please come. All right. Anywho's. No, I did my doctorate in convolutional neural networks and optimizations to run them at the edge, etc. So I really come to this podcast for the technical viewpoint, the how AI models work, how can we trust them, how can we design them well, and what are some of the pitfalls that you can do that. I mean, let's be honest, we've all experienced the AI slop. We've all seen it. We all can recognize AI like instantly. How do we do that? Especially in the health world, how can we make a trusted AI? So that is what I'm here to chat about.
Awesome. And awesome to have you here, Michael. And then also Michael leads our AI ML group, which is artificial intelligence, machine learning, if you don't know what those acronyms are, for our startup.com network, of which I am also a member and advisor, and Kate is also a member in Moon. So we all have a track record of connection there. So it's funny how everything comes together. All right. So again, folks, today is another episode on the bioactive breakdown. And that's the signal for us to deep dive in it. So let's start with, I think, probably the most important part of this, which is the trust gap and the public perception of AI. Because I've heard all kinds of things out there when I've been, as I've been building NutraSelect and talking to partners and getting all the questions from different people. And what this reason I had this idea to do this podcast with Gene, and we talked about it, I said, look, we need to educate people a little bit more. And this is, Kate, you'd appreciate this for consumers. We want to do that for consumers as well. And so how do we do that in a very transparent way to build this trust? Because we are going to have to build this trust. And one of the things I did when I was doing my due diligence on NutraSelect about a little over a year ago, I actually surveyed daily supplement users out there. And it was a very early survey of NutraSelect. It was basically just a handful of questions. Of course, where NutraSelect is today in terms of features and what's going to be in the app and that sort of thing didn't exist then. But out of all those people I surveyed, a third of them mistrust AI. One third. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I doubt that that's actually changed too much in the last year, because now AI is infiltrated everywhere, almost to the point where it's noisy, it's confusing. It's like, there's so many tools out there, so many different ways. And I venture to say that most people don't even know how it's affecting their life. But Gene, you got a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say something. I can understand why, at least in the beginning, people have not trusted AI. I started playing around with a little bit, looking at AI platforms and thinking maybe I can use this as a research assistant. So I would pose a question such as, show me human clinical research on XYZ nutraceutical.
Yeah.
And it would come back and it would show me something and it would give a reference. And I go, let me check on that. And I'd go in to find out that some of the citations it gave didn't even exist. It might have been a real journal. It wasn't the right volume. It wasn't the right year. It didn't exist in any volume or year. Some of it was just like made up because it seemed to take the information from somebody's website rather than from a legitimate source like PubMed or something like that. Now, Since then, I found better platforms that have been able to help me work with that. But yes, I always check the source. And that's one of the reasons people don't trust it, because it hasn't been trustworthy.
That's right.
In some of them, yeah. That's what makes what we're doing at NutraSelect a lot different.
Yep. So Kate, from your perspective, from the brand and consumer perspective, what do you think? Why do you think, I should say, AI feels untrustworthy to people?
Well, it's interesting. I think we're kind of at an inflection point where AI, especially in health, is everywhere, but it's kind of invisible. Yeah. So, it's powering your smartwatch insights. It's potentially like flagging arrhythmias, it's scoring your sleep. I sit in that every day. But I think from a consumer perspective, what I see is that the day-to-day person still really thinks of AI as ChatGPT.
Right.
And so, the person who doesn't trust AI because they've seen it as ChatGPT that doesn't always get it right, and so they don't want to trust it with their health, is the same person who's going to like happily rely on an app that's kind of quietly driven by it. And so it's an interesting kind of inflection point, as I said, that we're at. And I think, the loudest voices in the conversation of AI are often these generative tools, and they're not necessarily science-based applications of AI.
Right.
And, without that validation, it's hard for consumers to see the application being used in a way that they feel confident in, that's evidence backed, and that has that level of transparency.
I agree. And that reminds me, Moon, we were having a discussion at the beginning of this year, actually, and it was right after you attended the CES show in Las Vegas, Consumer Electronics Show. And I remember you saying that, AI is now everywhere. It used to be like the shiny thing leading with, but now it's kind of taken a back seat, and it's all about, it's a maturing, I'd say. So what's your perspectives on this, Moon, from where you're sitting?
I guess let me quickly talk about my entire experience, especially over the past decade in technology. Transformation of technology is inevitable in many terms. I started off in virtual reality, and I'll bring that back to AI in a bit. The reason why I had to bring that up is because back in the days I was selling these virtual reality experiences to different CMOs and brands, etc. And I still remember going to, I'm not going to name the bank, but one of the tier A banks. They asked me whether or not we can do something like Ready Player One. And I was like, it's a movie, right?
Right. Another movie.
It's not exactly. It's not really about whether or not the technology under delivers. It's more like human beings don't know how to use the technology or where the limit is. I mean, at some point, human needs to step in, right? That's the first thing. And second of all, people are not supposed to use ChatGPT as Google. There is a difference between the two. So I would say like most large language models are scraping their information off the World Wide Web. So whatever is available, whether or not it's on Reddit, whether or not it's on some odd websites that are no longer existing, like there's no reputation to it. It's just getting whatever data that is out there. So that's one of the reasons why people don't trust it, is because the source is not verified. So I guess what differentiate us in NutriSelect obviously is that obviously we have a bunch of scientists backing the entire initiative, and we know what sort of let's say journals we're getting from, let's say PubMed, NCBI, all these sort of trusted platforms, first of all, and second of all is we should have our own proprietary database as well, and that is what differentiates us. And honestly speaking as well, we are more of what we call predictive AI instead of just a generative AI tool. It's very different between the two. It's machine learning algorithms, essentially.
Exactly. Cool. Michael, I'm anxious to hear your perspectives here for sure.
Yeah, I think so especially on the topic of trust. I think like Kate Moon said, that the general public, their view of AI is still typically Chat GPT. Like it's still essentially the chat models. And I think you get a lot of confusion with that. So like one of the things that I noticed a lot is that people think that these AI models like think just like me and you do. Like they think these models reason, they think these models do things logically. But really they don't do any of that. At the heart of it, it's this predictive probabilistic machine. It's looking at it, it's trying to reproduce what a human does, but a lot of people simply, don't know the behind the scenes. So they see something, it looks human, it sounds human, and it gets stuff wrong just like we do. And so I think that has caused a lot of people to have a lot of confusion and therefore distrust. but you also got to like pair that with what so many people have been saying, which is essentially you're going to lose your job to AI. Like whatever field you're in, that message has been broadcast to everyone.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
it creates a lot of fear. Like people don't want AI because they're afraid of it. They're afraid it's going to take their job. They're afraid it's going to take their livelihood. So you've got this really complex situation of the answers they see from my AI aren't always right. They have a lot of fear from it. And I think there's got to be a lot done to show people that, hey, we have an AI tool. It's trustworthy. It's backed by experts. And that is really, I think, the trust battle that a company has to win.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Yeah, so there's good and bad to that. I always say this: the technology is just a tool,
Mm-hmm.
and any of us that are in it, we describe it that way because, and it's only as good as your data sets. And I love your phrase, Moon. Most of the people are trying to build something under GPT wrappers on it, which I'll give you my analogy as a ballroom dancer and done competition stuff, and everybody's seen Dancing with the Stars, right? Well, we laugh as people who've been trained in ballroom dancing because it's all for TV. We call it flash and trash because everything is up here, the arm movements, and it all looks great, but their footwork sucks. Okay, so they really aren't doing the right steps for the foxtrot or the cha-cha or whatever. Anyway, we laugh about that. So for me, that's my analogy for people who are trying to do something on the surface and scraping the internet. And I love what you said, Moon, because what we're building something predictive, and it's going to only learn from that and evolve over time as we gather more and more data. That's going to be extremely powerful. I mean, think about the future of this, which I'm already thinking is when we layer in genomics and these different pieces of this, and it learns from that. So it is going to, but again, it's still a predictive model or technology, right, Michael? It's still probabilistic in that sense there, but it's going to learn from that when it gets enough data that it will actually make predictions on things that we haven't even thought of, because the human mind isn't able to process like that, all that data and that information in the same way. So this is why we want to do this show. We want to start the conversation and say, and we're going to continue to do this with NutraSelect in terms of educating people and building that trust factor here. I think this is really important for consumers. I think, Kate, you would agree with that, and that's what you do every day of talking to consumers out there. So that's a segue into, let's just go into AI 101. Okay, this is your class, an AI 101 coming up here. So pay attention. Who wants to start with that? Whoever. Gene.
AI, I think, just sort of, I here am probably the least qualified to really delve into AI. My knowledge of it is based on being a consumer of AI.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is,
but Gene,
how
you've got 45 years as a nutritionist in the science. You know that inside and out.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, a little different. But AI, I think, has some real application to help in terms of pattern recognition and optimization, not for replacing. I think of AI, my use of AI is it's kind of a research assistant. And what it does is it can provide me with some sources of information that then I have to go through and dig a little deeper and see what it has to say. And I think that AI has great application for that type of thing. But again, it's pattern recognition and optimization. You and I, Bill, have conversations and we come up with ideas. Maybe at some point AI is capable of coming up with those same ideas. Maybe. But I'll tell you what it doesn't have. It doesn't have decades of relationships throughout the industry with people who are smart people, who know stuff, who are doing research that isn't even out there yet, that AI can't get a hold of. It can't really replace, but it can look at pattern recognition and optimization and make suggestions and help us on our road. So I think for me, that's kind of what AI is and what it isn't.
Yeah. Moon, how about you? From your perspective on AI 101, what do you want to share with everybody?
I guess most people did not really see AI in its original form. So, I mean, I was in this field around 7 years ago. That's when I started. And back in the days, we're talking about deep learning, machine learning, predictive algorithms. Obviously, there's a lot of different types of AI. It's just that people only got aware of it when ChatGPT came out, or what we call generative AI. So it's a completely different thing, I would say. Generative AI is utilizing large language models, trying to generate new things from existing data, in short, right? So that's why it was mainly used, or it got I would say the adoption was mainly from content generation. That was I would say, at the very first phase when ChatGPT came out in 2023. That's what most people are using it for. And nowadays, people are writing emails with it and all. But in theory, what we are doing is very different. It's, like I said earlier, it's predictive. So essentially, it's existed for decades, and traders, have been using predictive algorithms. I mean, predictive trading, e-trading, however you call it, it has existed for a very long time and is mathematics. It's not exactly, generating anything that is new that could be hallucination, what we call. So I guess, first of all, is we'll need to draw a line in between the two. It's not a completely new technology. Every new technology has its own downside and risk. But at the same time, we're not utilizing the latest technology right here, right now, just for NutriSelect. I guess that's the most important point to note.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And yeah, I think a lot of people, you're right. I agree with you. I think a lot of people, they immediately go to GPT and, wow, this is new. But again, this technology has been around for some years. I myself was looking at emerging technologies back in 2018, thinking about how I could approach changing the typical approach to doing clinical research on supplements, because everyone kept trying to put supplements in the pharma model, which didn't work. And only today do we have CROs, and there are partners with NutriSelect now, by the way, who are leveraging this technology as well, but they're also advancing evidence-based supplementation. So we're in the right time at the right place to do this. So I kind of put that on the back burner. I mean, I was looking at distributed ledger-based technology, which I think you tech people will know what that is. It's the basis for Bitcoin and all that. I even read the white paper, Michael. Give me credit there. I read the white paper in this. I could barely get through it, and I'm a scientist.
I'll give you some snaps.
Okay, give me some snaps for that. So, but I was thinking about, and there are test programs going out there where people are applying that technology to supply chain logistics and that sort of thing. So, but I kept thinking, okay, what if we apply that to research, right? And so, but I kind of sat on the back burner, and it really was Moon when generative AI came out that I brought it back to the surface and started thinking about, okay, maybe now's the time to investigate this for NutriSelect, and NutriSelect was born from that. So, Michael, so for you, I'm thinking you probably have some unique perspectives and real world examples based on your background, I'm sure.
Yeah, I can definitely relate some, and I'm going to capitalize a lot on what Moon said, because what the line that she's trying to draw for people between traditional analytical predictive AI with generative AI is like it's super important, I think, for people to kind of take a hold of. Because like AI and machine learning dates back to the 50s. Like, this is not new. It was really when hardware and software got cheap enough that machine learning exploded and really became a viable thing. And so, like, with that front, in predictive AI, like traditional AI, it can do some absolutely amazing things that computers simply could not do up to that point. And like, I was for a long time a bit of a machine learning like pessimist. I was like, nah, this is a buzzword. It's it's not going to stick around, whatever. And I still remember, it was like when I saw my first image classification, when it was this AI thing, and it showed it a picture of a cat, and it was like, that's a cat. And then it showed it a picture of a dog, and it was like, that's a dog. And then it showed it a picture of a human, and it was like, that's a human. I was like, oh my gosh. I am an expert programmer and I could never design something to do this. I was absolutely blown away, and I was like, all right, this stuff's for real. So like that line is really, really important between pattern matching, AI analysis that just excels more than we've ever created, and generative AI that is creating stuff that we, don't know if it's right. So in that domain, like I tend to try to give examples, and I try to make them as approachable as possible. So hopefully I don't like totally swing and miss here. But if we think about images, we see AI all the time in images today doing image like recognition. And so an example of this is in cars. Like when a car is driving down the road and it detects a person, that's AI. Like that detecting that there is someone there. When it detects a stop sign, that's AI doing it. Or like more pertinent for your audience would be radiology. We've all heard that AI in radiology is just crushing it and outperforming doctors left and right. And that's because these AI models have seen hundreds of thousands, millions, tens, hundreds of millions of radiation images, and can do that analysis much better because it has such a large data set to pull from. Like,
Right. That's right.
Dr. Bill, do you think you could go through 10 million images
No.
and make sense? Yeah, no, I absolutely could not.
No.
But like,
exactly. No.
Exactly. So this computing system can and stuff. So like a lot of the image, radiation analysis, that type of stuff is traditional AI. Also, like with auditory stuff, I try to get people to think about what is something a person can do very well that typically a computer cannot do well. And so like your dryer, the moment that it like sounds off, it's normal how it sounds. And then all of a sudden one day you're like, oh, dang it, something is screwed up. I'm going to have to go in there and fix it. But again, a computer would do terrible at that. Yet we can take a microphone, hook it up, let it listen, and it can detect with AI the moment that starts misbehaving. So like, again, all of that is predictive, traditional AI. And then like, I know probably most of your listeners are familiar with generative AI, generating images, generating videos, etc. Pretty familiar use case these days. But what I think is really cool and that we're going to see happen here is that we're going to have traditional AI doing analysis based on data, based on trusted data, based on expert reviewed cases. And we're going to have generative AI that acts as the interface because it feels human, it's easy to talk to. So you're not going to have the generative AI trying to give you the trust point. The trust point is going to be decided by a trusted, proven AI model, and then you're going to interact with it through an easy to use generative AI method. And I think that's where a lot of stuff is going.
Yeah. I love what you said. By the way, you're not alone in terms of your perception of machine learning, okay? Because the analogy for that is in physics. Albert Einstein didn't buy into quantum mechanics theory and all that in the beginning. He didn't. He wouldn't get on board with that. But it was an interesting time for physicists in the early part of the 20th century. But I see those same parallels here. And you're right. If I use the analogy for like nutraceuticals and what we're trying to accomplish, and what Gene and I have been doing our careers is reading clinical studies, evaluating all that. We can't possibly know. It's one of the reason I started this, because I said, what's the biggest problem I could solve for the industry? And it came to me right away, because for years, people would come to me, and I know for Gene as well, same thing. Hey, Dr. Bill, Dr. Gene, what do I take for this? Right. And I don't even know how to answer that question because there's too much out there. There's no way to process all that. And so,
Bill, I just gotta jump in and say, yes, I get excited about this because I'm very passionate about the fact that there are so many bad players in the industry. There's good ones, but there's so many bad players that will do it, what I like to call marketing science rather than real science. They create something that's not real. They tell people, they sell it, and a person doesn't know, is this product real? Is it based on science?
Yeah.
But they have a lot of influencers saying how wonderful it is and what have you.
Yeah.
People need something that is reliable and trustworthy that they can go to and say, is this real? They can't just go to their doctor unless their doctors had training. I spent 20 years training doctors and pharmacists at the university level about nutraceuticals, and they came in often knowing absolutely nothing, or being worse, having bad conceptions about it. So yes, that's why I'm excited about NutraSelect.
that survey that I did a year ago, that was the other comment that people made. There was two other major comments, right? One was, first of all, in terms of the mistrust, well, you're just going to have advertisers pay to put their products on there. And no, we're not. Okay, so that's okay. I took that. But the other one was that they're so programmed into this marketing hype in our industry, and it's a subjective science, right? And so, Kate, I know you got some perspectives on this from the consumer side, but how about jumping in there on that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do at Sleep AI is product validation in the sleep space. So let's say you're developing a supplement that is supposed to improve sleep. Our team will run the actual validation studies to prove the metrics that it does improve sleep on for a supplement brand. And it's really interesting to see the consumer comparison between a validated product and a non-validated product. And we've run side-by-side studies where we're serving up the exact same product, one with a validation seal and with science backing as a part of that marketing description, and one without it. And there is proof in the pudding that people are more likely to pick the product that has science behind it and that validation. But there's also a level of trust in that science that they still question. We see people say, okay, but who is this validating body and why should I trust them? And, what is the piece of this that I should believe? And, even when you have science behind it, there's still this, misconception that it could be just hype. So you really have to be able to tell that story and make it a part of your brand, as opposed to just slapping a seal on something that says we did a study on this and it works.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a whole nother level. And I think, Gene and I deal with this all the time. And I mean, and also what hurts us is not just the bad actors that can get away with marketing stuff and make wild claims, but, they just recently, there was a big study done in apple cider vinegar for weight loss, and it was in a premier journal. Well, it just got retracted, and everybody was basing all their claims. And as a natural products chemist, organic chemist, who knows the chemical makeup of apple cider vinegar, okay, that's like not possible that it can do that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I'll tell you something though, Kate. I got to mention something to you, so you'll appreciate this. So our Nutraland USA, which is the raw material company where I serve as chief scientific officer, we just did a study on our tomato source phytomelatonin, and the subjects we used Aura Ring data to get some subjective data, and there's AI behind that. But then we also use sort of traditional subjective, scientifically validated questionnaires like the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index and so forth.
Right.
But it was the first time we've ever done that. It was so fascinating to see how that was done and to be able to take the data that it provided and say, okay, people are falling asleep 33% faster. This is happening. That's happening. It was a great way to provide objective data, and obviously AI was part of that. So that was fascinating for me.
Cool.
What's really interesting about that space too is that if you put on a wearable and sleep a different wearable, every night, you're going to get different data from every single one. No wearable tracks each metric exactly the same way.
Right.
So even with AI involved, there's still a level of variance that you have to account for based on your measurement system.
And it helps when you say, okay, I'm only going to use the Aura Ring. I'm only going to use the version 3. I'm only going to, so everybody's got similar. But by the way, I should have mentioned Reputable was the CRO who did that study for us, and obviously they
were one of our CRO partners that we know.
That's right.
Monday.
That's right. So might as well give them a plug.
Yeah, there we go. Kyle, if you're listening, glad to have you on board, man. Okay, so let's jump into. We've already started touching on personalized nutrition, so let's go a little bit further with that. And for me, and I started to say this earlier, Michael. You were using the analogy of looking at all these radiograms or X-rays or whatever like that. Well, analogous for that, we can't possibly measure all the benefits or have that all in our brains of every published clinical study. It's not even just knowing on the surface the study, it's actually knowing what's in the study. Is the material they use for the study the correct material? Is the right design there? I mean, there are so many variables in that. And these are the things we're going to have to build in the back end to train our model and our engine, our precision supplement intelligence, to make it very precise, right? And be truly personalized. But again, it's going to take time and lots of data. At the end of the day, we're going to end up doing this decentralized, massive clinical trial on tens of thousands of people at the same time in real time. It's never been done, but that's what NutriSelect is going to end up being at some point. Think about all that data that is going to, guide innovation, guide research, whatever. I'm excited about that possibility.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, Moon, let's talk a little bit about architecture and how that's going to apply for us here. And that I'm kind of touching on that already, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, just kind of riding off of what you said earlier. Architecture-wise, obviously there are different parts, and Michael sort of brought it up earlier, riding on predictive AI and having a generative AI interface. So obviously, generative AI interface is just more for ease and for user friendliness. Having a check-in multiple times a week, checking in whether or not the supplement is working well for you, for example. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is so kind of like what you said, Dr. Bill, there's no way that a human can read or learn faster than a machine. And a machine can collect thousands of data points in a few seconds, for example. Humans cannot. And if you are to read a journal, let's say taking like 10 minutes per journal, you probably have, I don't know, one or two takeaways from it at most, or you're reading it for a reason, right? Either for research purposes or to see whether or not there's something that you can take away from it so you can apply it to your own development, for example. So I guess that's where NutriSelect is from, and that is how AI is supposed to look like as well. So imagine a junior employee. When you start training a junior employee, it takes at least 3 years to become associate, and it takes another 3 years, to become a director level, for example. It takes time to train up a human being. But for models, and for especially AI models, a junior person can become a senior person within 6 months, I would say, instead of 6 years. So that's the sort of pace that we're talking about. But it's not magic after all. It's not like, okay, when we launch it or when we develop it, it will be, the smartest thing on earth. And it's just not going to happen. We need data to train. And this is what we're doing as well.
You just reminded me of my graduate school days, getting my PhD in chemistry. There was this thing we had to do between our second year and we had to complete it by the end of our third year. It was called the cumulative exams. Now, I don't know if this is for other types of programs, but for chemistry, this is pretty popular. And so us as grad students, this is 3 decades ago or so, right? There was no computers, right? So this is how it worked. We got in our mailbox a list of 12 literature references, and that was it. And then we're going to have an exam in 2 weeks, and we had to know everything in those papers. And so immediately we're racing to, in a GPT human fashion, racing to get the list, and immediately in the science library, pulling out the books, finding the journals that were published. We didn't have electronic database, and we're finding all those and making copies. And so, but not just that article. We had to go and look at the 50 references layered into that and I take the top 10. And so we'd end up with a stack of papers. And so as students would get together, this was I love this analogy. If we would get together as a team, because there would be 3 professors asking just one question on the exam, and it would be based on 4 of the papers. And sometimes you could tell what the topic was, you could segregate them. And then we would each take one and we deep dive that and then share it with the group. That was a strategy of how we would get through those exams, which are freaking hard. And, but anyway, wouldn't I have loved to have AI at that point to use as a tool to find everything?
That would have been awesome.
That would have been awesome. Anyway, sorry. So Michael, I hand it over to you, man.
Yeah. So kind of looking at this, I think the question you're trying to get down to is like with AI, with clinical studies, how can we kind of cut through the noise, right? Like how can we make sure that we're, using what is accurate from the study, but not getting biased, that type of thing. I think that's where you're getting at, correct? Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No worries. And so, like on this note, one of the things that I really do love about AI, and especially more traditional AI, is that like it grounds the result in data. And so like that really is the foundation of machine learning, is that you have data and you have results and you want to connect the two. And so the output of what you're getting is truly based on the data, rather than some type of bias. And so, so it makes me think of 2 things. And so the first is that like most real life data is, and I will use, trying to bring in an occasional technical term, is hyperdimensional. So you can think, we have 2 axes on our XY. We got 3 when we include the Z or the Z axis for, some people. And then once you go off that and you got to 4 dimensions, where would that go? But AI things are typically on like the orders of like 200 dimensions. Like you think about everything involving health, you have so many different factors involved. And so what AI can do really well is that it can observe patterns and observe, similarities in ways that we would never think about. It'll find correlations in your data set that me and you would have never even imagined were there.
Exactly.
And so when you get new clinical research, you pull it into your database, you retrain your AI model based off it, but you're not just going to get biased by like the shiniest, newest, latest thing. You might have a journal article that says like, hey, everyone, like this supplement is doing X, Y, and Z. You integrate that into NutraSelect and it's like, this is really conflicting and we're not getting that same result. You let your model continue to go based off of, the mountain of data you have, not just the latest thing.
No, and I meant to say this earlier. Eugene and I both experienced this. I know. I've been in rooms and discussions with other scientists reading clinical research and not agreeing on the outcome.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's happened
many times. So this is what I love. It's moving from subjective science. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a scientist doing it, it's still subjective.
Exactly.
Because we can't see all those nuances. Moving to objective science. So let the science chips fall wherever they're going to fall, because that's what's going to happen with AI. It's not me, guys. I'm sorry your product sucks, but this is the data that you have. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to say it that way, but look, that's what we're trying to get to. It's like, okay.
Cut that part of the clip out.
Yeah. But no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to beat up product brands or whatever. We're trying to transform an industry here. We want people. Look, the goal for us at NutraSelect is to really put the power back in the hands of the consumers, to get away from this subjective science, marketing hype chaos, to give them a real tool that they can use to find something that's really going to improve their health. And then by default, they're going to transform the industry. My colleagues, Gene and I's colleagues, who don't want to do it, we'll drag them kicking and screaming, because guess what? The consumers won't buy their product anymore because it doesn't rate on our end score. So that is what's going to happen.
I would love that to happen. I love that to happen. I'll tell a 30-second story. It is there's a certain brand of mushroom coffee that's out there on social media, hyping that it'll do all kinds of things like get rid of all your inflammation, which isn't very advisable since it's part of your immune system. but they made one lie after another lie and no support. I actually wrote an article not naming them, not naming the brand, but what they did and why that's so terrible. And with NutriSelect AI, I can see that going away. People saying, oh, those influencers are lying because here's what NutriSelect AI says. It's the real science, not their marketing hype that isn't based in anything real.
Right. I cut you off, Michael. You had some more to say, I think.
Oh, no, I mean, I was going to just kind of capitalize on what Gina's saying there. Like, I mean, my wife is a nurse at the hospital, but, you know, in our personal circles, she's still one of the more medical people. And, like, she gets asked all the time by people, should I take this? Should I take this? Should I take this? And she's like, ask your doctor. Like, don't come asking me about the latest TikTok trend you saw. Just the need for objectiveness here is just absolutely huge. But no, I mean, Bill, I think that's probably all I was going to say, kind of in terms of cutting through, basing on research. And just AI is a great approach to really be based in data. Yeah,
and so Kate, again, coming to you to the consumer perspective because I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting, Gene, what you said. You know, the end score will eliminate the need for influencers to be the thing that are guiding supplement recommendation. And I honestly think that it's going to flip where it's the influencers are saying, and it has this end score.
That would be awesome, Kate. In that case, I would be totally supportive of that. I just hate when they outright lie, which I've seen them do all the time.
This is true.
But when you think about, adding on to kind of the consumer perspective of how AI fits into, this conversation of supplementation and, at the end of the day, every single person is taking supplements because they have a goal they want to achieve, right? And they are looking for something that's going to get them there, but it's not necessarily always the supplement that's the thing that's going to make or break. You can take something that's going to help you achieve weight loss, but if you're still eating poorly and not exercising or not sleeping or doing other parts of that health journey that don't support that goal, it's going to be difficult. And so I think it's an interesting space for AI to play a role because everyone is obsessed with tracking all of these biomarkers now. No one's really doing much with them because they're not tracking them in a way that they're interacting. So I'm not saying, I'm taking this supplement and I'm doing these workouts and then I got bad sleep tonight. And so now my workout tomorrow is going to be less effective. And maybe I should, change my routine. And so, I see AI as really the only way that we can make sense of all of those individual, biomarkers on a daily basis in real time to make truly personalized recommendations about health.
It'll be less stressful. It's like
you're not trying to figure it out.
You're not trying to figure it out because especially this comes with building that trust in there, which is a good segue into our next section here. And it's really about trust and building that here. And that's really part of the mission we have at NutraSelect is to really build this trust with consumers so that they understand that we have that in mind. We're not just throwing another product out there, an app for you to buy and, okay, it's making these supplement recommendations or whatever, and thinking that those companies paid us to get their brand advertised. No, it's not a pay for play. Okay, we're not taking that approach. We really want to cut through all that noise. So let's jump into trust in a bigger way and transparency, because I think this is really key with AI and ethics, of course, right? Because we are in the health proactive space or whatever, and there are regulatory frameworks that we're working in, like we're not going to make disease claims about a product or anything with our app. We're not going to do that. But we are going to evaluate product brands on the claims they are making, because that's going to factor into their this is what we did, and working with M&A Group for almost 4 years with Sanofi. We get the data set package from the product brand, which by the way was pretty poor most of the times, because they didn't really have the data to support the claims, but they were making all these wild claims, and we know subjectively as regulatory experts and under the regulation structure and function, it affects the structure and function of the body. And there's different ways to wordsmith a structure function claim, as we call it. That's the U.S. market. Okay. I thought about this, Kate. I'm thinking, well, for one, that's going to be a factor in the end score. We're going to probably help them improve their claims in a better way based on the actual data they have. And whatever their benchmark is at T0, then we'll take them through the accelerator program. We can take them through. It's like, here's your innovation roadmap or your research roadmap to get to from bronze level rating to a silver level. Let's take it one step at a time, right? How do you do that? Then that's going to improve your claims. That's going to improve your differentiation with your consumers that buy your product. So this trust factor is huge, I think, in terms of building that in that way. Gene, you know this as well. In terms of that. So
Absolutely.
what are your thoughts on that in terms of how it's, we're talking about personal health here. We're not going to make claims, and we got HIPAA rules and all that sort of thing to follow. But I know there's a lot of discussions in regulatory circles and lawmakers now, especially if you have something that's almost like a medical device. You might, if you start making really predictive things and it becomes diagnostic, then it's a medical device, right?
That's right.
That.
You have a good example that I always like to give of an allowable structure function claim, differentiating it from a drug claim, is you might have said, oh, glucosamine and chondroitin can help reduce joint pain. Well, that would be a drug claim, okay, because it's taking an existing condition and treating it. Whereas you could turn it around and make a claim like glucosamine will help promote joint comfort. Okay, so now you're not. So it's just a way of wordsmithing or joint mobility or joint, flexibility. So it's just a way of doing it correctly. And I think one of the areas that I see AI making a big difference in is, heck, you could even train AI in the fundamentals of structure function claim language.
Absolutely.
It'll take it a while to get there, but you can do that and say, based on this research, what kind of claims could be substantiated based on this criteria? And that could save a lot of time for people. You're still going to need a regulatory expert, I think, to review it and make sure it's right. But man, that could be a huge difference. So I see that when you have something like NutraSelect that's going through the science, going through the data, I think you have a situation where you can gain some consumer trust once you have that transparency, and they know how it's done because you're transparent about it and you're saying this is the criteria, this is the structure, here's how we're doing it, and then be able to make claims that are supportable. So I mean that's the thing. I think you want to have trust, but you got to have the transparency to have the trust, and you want to teach AI about how to assess the science and perhaps make structure function claims. It's more than you were asking about, but that's kind of where I see it going, and that's where I see it now.
And I think that's a good segue for you, Michael, because I wanted to talk about algorithmic bias, because I just saw this the other day. I think you were talking about this, like if you have all bad data and you're training it all on bad data, well, then it's going to return bad results, right? It's not going to be right. So you have some thoughts on this, I know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of people have heard the whole like garbage in, garbage out sort of thing, and it's become a little bit of a well-known phrase, but it's even more than that. And really the quality of your data, especially in an area like personal health, where trust is such a big factor, really, really, really does matter. And so the example I'm going to give, and I'm going to take it to the extremes, because my doctoral advisor, one of the just pieces of wisdom he always would lean on was that when you speak in extremes, you can make points really easily. And so on one extreme, if let's say we're doing radiation imagery and we're detecting if an image has cancer or not, or at least like a tumor or a mass or not. If we're training an AI model and the only images we show it are images that have a cancer, then the model is going to learn really, really fast that if I predict true, there is cancer, that it's going to be right 100% of the time. And so it's going to learn I only predict cancer when it's being trained. Now, it's not very hard to see if we take this model and we go into the real world and we try to apply it, what's it going to do? It's going to every single time predict, oh, yes, this patient has cancer, which would be a really, really bad outcome. Now, you go to the other extreme and say, okay, let's have it, only see images without cancer. Well, same thing's going to happen. Just we taught the model to predict always not cancer. So those are the extremes. But even if it was like you had 90% of your data and training was one thing and only 10% other, you're going to ultimately bias an AI model to have a favoritism towards one side or the other. And so like it really does, going back to what Gene was talking about with transparency, I think you need that. And I think you need to have some level of transparency with what your data set is and how it was accumulated and kind of what is in it. Now, obviously, you don't give the data set away. You don't say, hey,
Right.
here's our magical gold. Everyone else, please have it. It's at the end of the rainbow. Turn left, you'll find it. No, but having an evenly distributed data set is going to overcome some questionable training biases that you could have in there. And I think that all comes back to trust of who's doing it, trust of the expertise of who is building and putting together this type of AI model.
And that's what I was talking about before. Scientists, if they're science teams within certain product brands, whatever, they're selectively, whether subconsciously or consciously, many, many times I've seen it, not talking about the bad data, but only about the good outcome. They had one good study, but they had one that contradicted in some parts of that. So they push that away. That's subjective science, man. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and if you look at the layers, let's just pick one ingredient in our industry, right? Ashwagandha, okay? Traditional use in Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years. There are a few companies out there that are doing a lot of clinical research on it, and they have their branded ingredient. However, when we build our data sets, we're going to take all the research on ashwagandha, not just the premier one that has 70 clinical studies, okay? Because if we build it off of that, that's not going to be very accurate. So, and the other thing I love about this, there's a spectrum on clinical research studies and how they're done and the primary outcomes, the p-values on the results, all right? I've seen arguments over p-values. Well, no, that's not a good p-value. It should be 0.001 or not 0.005. Okay, that's the subjective nonsense discussion, okay? It's like, what's the difference between those really? This is what I love because we won't have to have those discussions anymore. The AI is going to do it in a much better way because it is built for that. It's built for being objective, right? Okay. Kate, from your perspective on trust, transparency, and ethics.
I think especially in health, people want to know that understand the science behind it, but be told in a way that they can actually understand. So if I'm a normal day-to-day person, I'm probably not sitting around understanding what a p-value means even to begin with.
No, exactly.
And so,
what?
A lot of these, a lot of the science that's out there is, directed toward a, clinical study that's all in the official report format, and it's not translated to a language that, a person like me who has no science background is going to read and understand and trust either. So I think there needs to be that kind of give and take between, yes, back it with the science and have the right data sets that are feeding your models, but explain those to people in language that they understand, that's not intimidating and that's approachable. And give them the opportunity to dive deeper into the science if they want, but meet them halfway and saying, I want you to understand this. Here's how I'm going to phrase it. It's almost like you're writing your manual on your AI for dummies, without not saying that consumers are dummies, but simplifying it into something that's a little bit less intimidating, more approachable, but still helps people understand the science backing. I think that's the right approach to give that transparency.
Yeah.
And be open with where this data set comes from, how you're adding to it, how their data is going to play into it as well. I think that's one piece that people are a little bit nervous about is I already feel like I'm giving away so much of my data every single day. This is just yet another piece that I'm giving away. And how is that going to be used? Is it going to be used responsibly? I think that's the second part of that transparency conversation.
Yeah, and that's a good segue for you, Moon, because when we look at in the back end of NutraSelect, that's one of our AI agents, right? That's going to explain what Michael's talking about, this algorithms that analyze all the subjective scientific data. That has to be translated, communicated through that AI, agentic AI, to the consumer in a way with the report saying that they'll understand. And there'll be opportunities then for deep dive or whatever, but I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I guess it's more serving the purpose of translation. So like we said earlier as well, as an interface, right? So at the end of the day, what it's trying to do is to serve as a personal advisor. Let's put it that way. It's an advisor that is backed by data. But regardless, like whatever you see on that interface it won't be jargoned, and it will be filtered out for quite a few layers before it's actually being outputted to the users. So most important thing is that a general supplement consumer, they're never going to understand what exactly those nutrients are. They just need the trust. So at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to understand where they are in their journey, to understand what they're facing as problems, and to see whether or not that supplement really is right for them. So I guess it also serves that sort of personal advisor purpose. It's just like I mean, it's not exactly a doctor, right? But it's going to understand and check up on you on whether or not the dosage work, whether or not you're actually reacting to it. Because I was kind of educated in this field, but I'm not exactly educated. But at the same time, what I understood is some people might not react to a lot of different materials and chemicals. And it is just what it is. It's just like, for example, mental health diseases. Like a lot of people don't react to, let's say, sertraline or any sort of SSRI. So I guess this is where things lie, and what we're trying to do as well. Instead of letting them go down the rabbit hole, we're trying to check up on them and provide personalized advice.
Exactly. And by the way, there are, speaking as the natural products chemist, and actually I have a good segue for you, Kate, talking about the winery business, because I actually made my own wine. My professor at UC Santa Cruz has his own label, Pelican Ranch Winery, and we actually crushed the grapes. And I don't know if he's still doing it. He's retired now. He's got a store downtown Santa Cruz. But so if you take a botanical, let me tell chemistry for a second, to see how complex this is. A red wine, I'll use a red wine as an example. It's very complex. You taste all kind of little notes. You can't quite detect what all those are, right? Would you know that there's probably about 400 components in a glass of red wine? Okay. And that comes from the aging in the oak barrels and all the different chemical compounds that come out. That's what gives it this complexity and flavor and taste. It's the same thing with botanicals. It's the same thing. It's a botanical, right? It's an herb or something like that. There are thousands of bioactive compounds. As a natural products chemist, that's what we did. We looked for those individual compounds that had certain indications for, we were looking for new cancer drugs, actually. And that was my research. This is a very complex, time-consuming task. And so you don't have to know all of that to know from the consumer standpoint that this is why it's working for you. To your point, Moon, what a particular botanical may be the right botanical for a certain person, but our engine is going to learn from their tracking their real-time wellness progress. Give them real-time health progress check-ins and wellness insights based on their input and their data, and also data coming in from thousands of other people, and also what's building into our data set. This is going to evolve in real time in such a way that we can't even imagine actually today of what that'll look like. But it's going to actually change how we approach health. Okay, which is a great segue into the most exciting part of discussions. This has been a great discussion. We probably could talk all night about it. Well, let's talk about the future of this. I think I'm excited to hear what you guys have perspective-wise about the future of AI in health and nutrition. And I'll start with you, Moon, because I think you're out there. You're a thought leader in the space. You're seeing what's out there in health tech more than I am. I haven't had a chance to get out there, but what are some of your thoughts about the future here?
Well, I guess it's applicable to many different industries. Lots of industries are being reimagined and transformed at this stage by AI, but especially in wellness and health, I would say, because it's a space that is very data intensive. It's not like some of the other industries that we know of that is more, commercial or anything like that. It's the same in finance as well, right? For example, loads and loads of data, and whichever industry that is data heavy, it needs to have a longer and more careful transformation with any sort of technology. It will take more time, just more data, more time. It's very simple. But at the same time, I guess it comes down to trust building, which is going to take longer as well. It is what it is, but at the same time, I think most people should start embracing it because even doctors make mistakes. And I mean, all of us make mistakes. It is, it's just human beings. So I guess it's more or less trying to build an expectation as a consumer that you're getting something that is smarter, but it's not 100% accurate. And even if so, like none of the laboratory test is going to come back and say 100%. It's always 99.9. So I guess this is where we are in terms of the knowledge and expectation gap.
Yeah, nothing's 100%. It never is. That's what I learned when before I even went to get my PhD in chemistry. I had the mainstream media, which is very dumbed down, black and white, to think about science. Okay, but when I got into the PhD program and I started digging into it, I said, "Oh my God, it's not black and white; it's totally gray." Okay, and every time it's like a sphere of knowledge, and every time you answer to one question, the sphere grows and it keeps growing exponentially. And then on the surface of that sphere are just more questions. Okay. And so it goes to infinity there. You're never going to have 100%. So Michael, what's your thoughts about the future of where we're going with all this?
So I think I can speak a little bit more to the future of medicine on the whole. Maybe not supplements as much, but kind of where AI plays a role in the future of medicine. And I think Moon's right in the sense, or especially when she was talking about the amount of data we're collecting. Because as people use more wearables, we're collecting heart rate data, just vitals. Ongoing, the amount of data we will have per person is really exploding exponentially. And so for health, that is like a really great thing because doctors always, medicine gets better every time the technology that we use in the medical field gets better. And AI is just the next step of that. You go back 150 years, they didn't even have the digital electronics we have today to just do routine, checkups and exams. And so with the amount of data we're creating, with AI models that can actually make sense of all that data, I think we're really going to start entering into a more predictive phase of medicine, which I think some people could get a little scared of and be like, that sounds a little spooky. That I don't want them to have all that data on me. But it is a great thing. Better healthcare, better quality of life, AI helping us be healthier human beings, analyzing and understanding how certain food intakes or certain drug intakes impact each person differently. That's all a fantastic thing. So I think that healthcare with AI will continue to improve. I think it will enable doctors to serve more patients, which we already have a shortage of. And I think predictive medicine is really going to improve with AI. So I'm optimistic in this area, and excited and hoping it's going to enable me to live at least to 120. But I don't want to set the goalpost too low either.
Yeah. Well, look, I totally agree with you because I'm already in discussions. I can't talk about with who. Huge health professional network that wants to license our API from NutriSelect to plug into their ecosystem. So it's going exactly the direction you're talking about. So these NDs, MDs, whatever, nutritionists are going to have our interface for patient intake. Okay. And they'll be able to do that. Now, the patient is the end consumer, of course, but then they can make recommendations and that sort of thing for that consumer. Because that was the other response I heard from supplement users. Okay, the daily supplement users, they are taking supplements, right? There's 188 million people just in the U.S. alone taking supplements every day. That's a huge number of the population, right? But one of the things I heard in the survey, which was when they were negative about AI, well, I'm just going to go to my doctor. Mm-hmm. Well, I got something to say about that. You got to do your due diligence about that as well, because it's subjective in medical practice, not just in science. Okay, so it's only as good as the data they have and the technology they have to analyze things, and they don't always get it right either. So it is where we are. But I agree with you. I think it's going to go into a more accurate way of being more predictive. And I already know, following Health USA's newsletter and all the funding it's raising, millions of dollars of capital for research in different areas of the $1 trillion healthcare industry. We're going to see a massive transformation there, all that for sure. Kate, how about you for the future?
Yeah, one thing that we've been talking about a lot at Sleep AI is this idea that AI is going to allow the smartphone to turn out to be like the most powerful tool in modern healthcare.
Oh, yeah.
And how it's going to bring this reach, this care continuity, and like a different level of immediacy to populations that the traditional medical systems still really struggle to serve. Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting to think about the insights that can scale that through a smartphone now that were once just confined to like hospital equipment or to some sort of specialized clinic or study. And so I think we just have such an opportunity to extend preventative care without really increasing cost or complexity to the consumer. And I think that's going to be the future, honestly, where we were able to do so much more for our own health outside of the medical system and serve ourselves just through the smartphone.
Exactly. And I'll go to Gene here, and then I'll give you my science fiction view of where we're going. It's not Skype. Don't worry. Okay. So,
so just writing on what you're saying, Kate, about the smartphones and how that works. I see more. I see an expansion of wearables. Not only wearables, but at the conference that I mentioned earlier, people were getting chip implants that were able to read things in their body, send that data back to their cell phones, give them a better view of how their body's doing. I see, whether it's wearables or chip implants, corresponding with your smartphone, giving you information, and that cross-pollinating with the kind of recommendations that you get from NutriSelect AI. I see that as part of where the industry is going with regard to supplementation and personalized medicine or personalized nutrition.
Yeah, I agree. And I will give you guys a preview of the discussion I just had 2 days ago. I got contacted by a company in Germany, and they have developed the tech, and Moon, you may have heard of this, where it's basically a really advanced wearable, like here's my Fitbit, right? But on the phone can do biometrics and look at 100 different biomarkers from that, looking at the eye, the retina, the skin, everything. It can actually read that. And he just showed me all this, it was yesterday. And I'm like blown away by it. And so guess who's a future strategic partner for NutriSelect? Okay, so that's coming, Moon. we'll talk about that offline later. But I'm super excited about that. But that's the future. So, okay, other than Gene, you guys are youngsters. Okay, so I remember watching the original. Hey man, we're the same age. Come on. I remember watching the original Star Trek series when I was a boy, right? And this is how funny the culture has changed. My mom and dad would watch it, right? But it would be on later at night because they thought it was too scary for kids. I would sneak downstairs from my bedroom and sneak behind the couch and watch the Star Trek episode while they were watching it with Captain Kirk and everybody. That's how I got started into science and technology. I love science fiction, all that. So I mean, but think about it. Communicators, they were using that. That's the cell phones today.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look at the medical devices. We have MRIs now. You know, they do the scanning on the beds, whatever. Now they have the device, little thing. It's like doing the medical scan. Well, guess what? That's where we're going. Okay, that's the future. We're going to be able to do that in real time, and it's just going to explode in terms of that. All I know is that all the big guys like OpenAI and Amazon, all these guys, they already are raising billions to go build the data servers that are going to have to manage the volume of data that's going to be coming from all this advancement. I don't know where they're going to put it. And I think I saw it in a sci-fi movie. They had those data centers on the moon or something like that, or where, I don't know, somewhere in some movie or science fiction I saw that.
That way they don't have to pay for cooling.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. They don't have to pay for cooling. That was why they had them there. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So
I'm sure AWS is feeling the urgency of that investment this week.
Yeah, no kidding, right? With the outage, doesn't it show how vulnerable we are for that? Oh my gosh. I mean, it's like, holy crap. And it's based on a server data that was in Virginia or something like that in one of their original ones. Well, they're going to have to upgrade it pretty quick.
I have to tell you something, Bill. I think I mentioned this to you before, but one of our strategic partners, Radical, is actually using some of that same science that you talked about with the cell phone, where you can use things like your computer camera, and it can do that same type of thing with the face, and it's scientifically validated.
Yeah, the technology. And I asked the first question I asked him yesterday. I said, "Hey, Johannes," I said, "So what have you validated this in the back end?" They have, and he said it. We already kind of touched on this. Nothing's 100%, right? But it's better than nothing versus doing something that gets you 80% or 85, 90% of the way there. And then you can go the rest of the way with, further, actual, biomarker testing and blood work or something like that. But the technology is there for that. And that's going to only improve from this day out. So, okay, guys, this has been a really awesome, this is probably the most fun episode I've had since all the episodes we've done with Bioactive Nexus. And we'll have to revisit this down the road because everything's going to change, right? And evolve, and have the same guys come out, have you guys come back for that. But let's wrap this up and let's kind of walk through some of the key takeaways here. And I'll just turn it over to you guys. Whoever wants to jump in. What's the key takeaway? Or maybe let's put it this way: what is the key message you want our listeners to hear?
In an AI one sentence way.
There you go.
What is the takeaway?
I think AI's one sentence is about 3 pages long, though. So if that's what you want us to do, we can.
That's the prompt.
yeah. That's the prompt for them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No. So what's the outcome? So we've already prompted it with the whole show. If you're the GPT feedback, Michael? What's your
I think, so my main point, my main takeaway is that I think right now in society, there is a lot of concern and fear about AI. It's not unfounded. We've seen AI systems that we can't trust. We've seen AI slop, and we've seen AI projects be thrown together very, very quickly. But at the core, AI can be a very trusted technology. And I think a lot of trust can be derived from proven outputs, as well as trust in the data and trust is in who is putting it together. So I would encourage people not to be afraid of or not to be concerned about anything labeled AI. I would just look at it as the next iteration of technology and don't throw the good out with the bad.
Cool. Kate, how about you?
I think I'll keep it short and sweet. Be transparent. Back it with science, but explain it in a way that consumers can actually understand.
I love that. That's perfect. Moon.
I'd say give it some time and give it a second chance. Just because you've used a very poorly developed AI product doesn't mean that it's completely wrong, and it's not representative of the entire technology.
That's right. And Gene.
Just it's kind of what we've talked about in people's fears that AI shouldn't be thought of as, should be thought of as sort of assistive intelligence as opposed to artificial replacement. It's there to help us, not replace us.
Right. And for me, it's, to me, a huge sci-fi fan. It's the realization of the computer age, to be honest. I mean, we had all this. I remember when the first, Apple computers came out and the 1.4 megabyte floppy disk, right? And, that was like revolutionary thinking about it. Oh my God, this is really cool. But I can still remember what that felt like of typing something in a word processor instead of writing it in a journal.
It was incredible. It was incredible. Or typing it on a typewriter and having a backspace and use whiteout, and it was amazing. All you had to do is put in your program disk, and then you put in your data disk, and then you
typewriter. Yeah, we had that. I was using a typewriter, and you had the whiteout. You scroll over and do the one. Okay, we're dating ourselves, guys. But
I was about to say, I absolutely relate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not. Si pero no, as we say in Mexico. Anyway, the future is bright, guys. Trust AI. We're going to keep doing shows like this and talk about NutraSelect. We are going to be very transparent. This is really key. We're not going to share our data sets with everybody, but we are going to be very transparent how we do that. And of course, and validate that, improve that, and continue to talk about it. So this is the beginning of how we're going to do that. So again, I want to thank all of our guests tonight. It's been awesome.
All of you.
Thank you, guys. It's been an awesome discussion, and we're all working together actually. So Kate's coming on board to help us on the marketing side with NutraSelect. Moon's, we're already there in terms of strategic partnership. Gene's on there. And we have two other science team members. I should have had them come on tonight as well. It would have been too little crowded on the screen. But Tim Ziegenfuss, who is the CEO and founder for Centers for Applied Health Sciences, he's been doing clinical research for 3 decades. And then we have.
Well, you know what we should do? We should just have another one where we kind of focus in on the scientific aspect of
we'll do
what NutraSelect is about, and then have the scientific advisory board talk.
We'll do that. We'll have Dr. Elijah Wood. He's an ND, and his experience, and then, of course, Tim, and then you and I, Gene, and we'll do that. It'll be fun. All right. I'm going to take us out of here. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. It's been awesome. Don't hang up yet. Let things upload. So let me do our outro, and then I'll stop the recording. But again, thanks for joining us. And again, this will come out for those watching, if you're watching live, if you missed it, after I get through post-production, which, by the way, AI is working right now to do the transcript of this whole show. But guess who the human is that has to go through and reread the transcript? Because when we use scientific technical terms, AI doesn't get it right all the time. It comes up with the craziest words.
I know.
And so guess what? A human is going to have to do post-production here. That's me, to read the transcript and make sure because the caption just actually says the right thing.
That's only been an hour and a half podcast. What are you talking about?
Oh, God, it's going to take me an hour and a half because I have to rewatch the whole thing. So that's okay. But it'll be fun to do that. All right, guys. Let's have a good night. We'll see you in the next podcast. Gene and I are in Supply Side Global next week in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's going to be super, super exciting. Actually, for NutraSelect, we got tons of meetings set up. I am going to be run ragged next week for sure, running from one to the other. It's always like that, but it'll be fun. We'll have some debrief to do after that for Bioactive Nexus, you guys listening here. All right, and that will take us out of here.